There we go.
Okay. A little nervous because this is my first time. So good morning, everybody, and welcome. Today what I want to talk about is something that we all carry, but we often avoid, and that's fear. Fear is not just an emotion, it's an invitation, even a doorway, if you will allow it, a teacher. We often see fear as the enemy, but what if instead we looked at it as a shadow that shows us the light inside of us that is yet to shine? I invite you as we move through this talk to gently open your hearts, to not get rid of fear, but to understand it and embrace it, and even welcome the chaos and the darkness sometimes it can bring. So I ask, what is fear? Fear is the body's way of saying, pay attention. It's the energy that rises up to protect us, to signal that something feels uncertain or unsafe. But here's the spiritual truth of it. Most of the fear that we carry inside of us is not about physical danger. It's about the unknown. And fear whispers, what if I fail? What if I'm not enough? What if I lose? Or what if the world doesn't catch me when I leave? Fear feeds on uncertainty, and uncertainty is chaos. The chaos of not knowing the outcome, the chaos of stepping outside of what we find to be familiar. And yet chaos is also the birthplace of creation. Before the universe was formed, there was chaos. Before you were born, your soul entered through the unknown. So fear is tied to chaos. That means fear is also tied to creation itself. I decided to face my fears last year. Well, it was actually a little over a year ago, about a year and a half. I was in the shower where I do most of my meditation because water for me is a conduit and it opens me up. And while I was doing this meditation, I heard, if you want anything to significantly change, you have to skydive. No way. That was the first thing I said, no way. I have a terrible fear of heights. But then when I actually sat in it and I really started to look at it and understand what letting go of that fear meant, it meant trusting the process. It totally meant let go and let God. And that's one of my favorite quotes. However, even though I haven't skydived yet, and I plan to, it did set the stage for me to look at my other fears and start to assess what that was and try to overcome those as well. So one of my first ones was needles. I've always had this whole creepy thing. I swear I was born afraid of needles. The whole idea of somebody putting something like that inside your body and you not having control. But I decided that last time I got my blood draw, I was like, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to see it happen. And when I did, I took the power. I wasn't even afraid of it. Actually, I walked through it and I thought to myself, gosh, I was always afraid of that. What was I mean, it was definitely something in my mind that I created, right? The other thing was singing in public. I can speak in public, but singing in public, that's people are really going to judge you, right? And I think it was more the judgment that I was going to get from others than the actual singing itself, right? It was more the fear of that. And I decided that I was no longer going to have that fear and I was going to do it. So on every Friday night, I sing karaoke now. And I've had other small fears like spiders, you know, and I came to where I catch and release now, you know, instead of killing. So those things have been a huge change for me, a pivotal change in my life, embracing those things that I was so scared of or afraid of. So let's look at darkness, because darkness is another part of fear, right? And we're conditioned to believe that darkness is bad, that holds danger, pain, suffering, right? But darkness is also the soil where seeds germinate. The womb is dark before it gives forth birth. The night sky is dark before the sun rises. And when you sit in meditation, your mind is in darkness. All birth begins in darkness. And when fear arises, it often feels like a descent into darkness. We're falling away. And that's where most people will stop. They'll resist, they'll run, they'll turn away, distract. But spiritually, the path calls us to go deeper. Darkness does not come to destroy us. It comes to strip away all the illusions. And when you embrace your fear and you sit in the chaos, you discover something profound. You are still here. That you're more powerful than the shadow itself. So let's look at chaos now, because that was another part of fear. Chaos feels messy. It's the storm before the clarity. And it's the breakthrough, or actually the breakdown before the breakthrough. And spiritually, it's a reset point. It clears what no longer serves and forces us into the present, to be here now. Think of a caterpillar. Inside the cocoon, chaos ensues. And it turns into an absolute goo. It breaks down into nothing, right? Before it begins to rebuild again and become a butterfly. If that caterpillar turned away from that chaos, it would never fly. So too in our lives, fear often signals transformation. It says the old is ending. Something new is trying to be born. What if instead of resisting, we said, yes, I will dance with chaos. Yes, I will sit in the unknown. And yes, I will trust that darkness is not my enemy, but the womb of my rebirth. I had a incident that came up recently where I was in a car accident, right? And it was at the beginning of this year, and I had just came back from Michelle's house. We had been powwowing at her place. And when I got back, I realized, oh crud, I have to run back out to the store. So I left, leaving out of the entrance where my neighborhood is at, and it gets very congested. And so sometimes you have to wait for a car to be kind enough to let you get out so you can get in the center turn lane and get out into the traffic. And a car stopped for me, and as I pulled into the center lane, I suddenly had a big, huge red dually pickup coming at me head on. He was riding the turn lane to avoid the line of cars, obviously, right? But as I saw him, I veered, and he veered, and we tried to miss each other, but his tire ended up punching a hole in my bumper. And it was, it was what you would consider a very chaotic moment. But the funny thing was that I sat extremely calm in that moment. I wasn't fearful. I wasn't worried about, oh my God, what happened? What could have went wrong? Am I okay? I just looked in my rearview mirror and I saw him, and he stopped and turned around and came back, and he got out of his truck, and both of us were like, are you okay? And he said, I'm so sorry, I was riding that turn lane and I knew that I should not have been doing that. And he said, if you don't mind, I'll pay for everything out of pocket if you don't want to get the insurance companies involved. And I automatically got a message from my guides immediately. This is okay, go ahead and go with it. So I rolled with the process. We exchanged telephone numbers. We talked about, he would get a hold of me and so on and so forth. But I looked at the situation and I thought to myself, 6 months ago, I would have been a shaken wreck. After that, I would have been a million things in my mind. What could have went wrong? What, oh my gosh, he could have hit me hard enough to all the things, right? But I wasn't afraid. I actually trusted that I was safe and I was on the other side of it. And then I thought to myself, well, you want to know what? I'm lucky I even had a car to get in an accident with. That's the way I wanted to see it. I wanted to see that silver lining inside of it instead of looking at the scary parts. I was actually baffled at where I was at that moment. and how I was able to process and get on the other side of it without being fearful. A little bit later that day, this is a real fun part, Michelle came over because we were going to go out. And she came in and I said, guess what happened to me today after I left your house? And she said, what? I said, I got into a car accident. And I was actually laughing, and she looked at me and she said, you are the only person I know that will laugh about something like that. But it was beautiful. It was, I don't know, it was so empowering for me to be on the other side of that fear. And Eckhart Tolle once said, this is a good one, that some change looks negative on the outside. However, when you really look at it, you realize that there is space being created in your life for something new. Always look for the silver lining in things. The shift in the way you see it will assist in the acceptance, right? So I look at fear as a teacher. When fear shows up, instead of asking me, how can I get rid of this? I ask, what are you here to teach me? Fear teaches humility. It reminds us we're human, right? It teaches courage. Not the absence of fear, but moving into it with our hearts, right? And fear teaches faith, because when nothing feels certain, the only place to stand in is trust. When we embrace fear, chaos, and darkness, we stop being controlled by them. We stop giving them the power in our lives. They become allies on our path instead of our enemies, right? When we shift the lens that we see the world through, we create our own reality of happiness. There's some quotes I'd like to share, and one of them I know everybody knows is the only thing we fear is fear itself, right? From Franklin D. Roosevelt. And the other one being, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek. That's by Joseph Campbell. I leaned into courage, or I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it, and that's Nelson Mandela. And there's a poem called Overcoming Fear by Ed Ostrom I would like to share. It says, "O Lord, often my life is imprisoned by fear. To the salt mines of defeat many times I lingered near. Self-molded strong chains of indwelling low self-esteem. Shut off on the side tracks the vast vistas of my dreams. In all my experience with chains of fear I find, this single thought brings me tranquility. Fear is very truly false evidence appearing real. This thought can help me with my fear's great negativity deal. So often the things that we fear we come to find are never as bad as we make them in our minds. Those that do happen are not as bad as we think. Excuse me. So why do we allow them the great plans of life to sink? I know God hasn't given us the spirit of fear. Through faith to Jesus, I can now choose to linger very near. He will snap fear's strong chains in love and set me free. I overcome it, and overcoming grace, I know I live a wondrous victory. Fear has so often held me captive, overwhelming me in the muddy quagmires of stress and strife. In the midst of fear, I look upon the Lord's face. From fear delivers me and holds me in his strong embrace. Through God's wondrous love, I am now free, or now from fear set free. Fear in my life now has no lasting power over me. In love, the Lord Jesus set me at liberty. Our indwelling fear, I daily know wondrous victory. So in closing today, I'd like to leave you with this truth. Fear is not the end. It's the beginning. Chaos is not punishment. It's possibility. Darkness is not your enemy. It's your womb of rebirth. And the next time fear rises in your chest, instead of running, place your hand on your heart and whisper, I see you, I welcome you, show me what I need. Because beyond fear lies freedom. Beyond chaos lies creation. Beyond darkness lies the brightest light of all, the light you carry within.